Southeast in the morning, where we'll start off with plenty of sunshine. Further west across southwest England and Wales, we'll start to see some showers move in. Similar story for northwest England too. A few showers too for Northern Ireland and also parts of Scotland, although the very far north of Scotland, actually, we could start the day here with some sunshine too. But it's really the zone between eastern Scotland down into northwest England and Wales where it's going to be a fairly disappointing day to come. Further outbreaks of rain, some of this will be heavy. Also showers for parts of southwest England and Northern Ireland, but to the east of this, across East Anglia and southeast England, actually a reasonable day to come here. Plenty of sunshine, and in the sunshine, feeling a little bit warmer here, so we could see highs reaching 19 or 20 degrees. But if you're stuck under the rain, especially further west, it is going to be feeling fairly cool for the time of year. Into the evening period, we'll continue to see outbreaks of rain move northwards. Also keeping an eye on the risk of some heavy rain just arriving into the southeast as well. And really the middle of the week is going to be pretty changeable across the board. Temperatures for most around average, but still feeling okay if you do see some sunshine.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It is 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 13th of April. This is The Weekend on GB News, and I'm Ben Leo. Horror in HMP Frankland. 3 prison officers attacked by the brother of the Manchester Arena bomber. Counter-terror cops are now investigating the attack at one of Britain's highest security prisons. But the big question is, just how was this allowed to happen? Elsewhere, emergency legislation saves British steel, but if the government can act so swiftly to save industry, why can't they act to stop record numbers crossing the English Channel? And talking of deportations, another MP deported. Liberal Democrat Wira Hobhouse is sent back home by China as she tries to enter Hong Kong. Plus, Oxford and Cambridge rowers, there they are on your screens now. They're gearing up for today's boat race in the so-called toxic Thames. Jack Carson is waterside.
The time for preparation is over, the crowd is building and so is the excitement. We're just 20 minutes away from the 79th women's boat race here on Putney Embankment.
I'm Ben Leo and this is The Weekend. Let us know what you're up to today, gbnews.com/your say. And apologies for my quite raspy voice. I was out for one drink with Bev Turner and Alex Armstrong last night. This has absolutely nothing to do with it. Halfway through my show last night, at about 10 p.m, my voice randomly started to go, but I do appreciate the optics. Anyway, keeping me company on the show today is political commentator Jonathan Liss and broadcaster Christo Frufas, who will, I'm sure, take very good care of me if I need it. But before we get stuck into today's stories, here's your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Ben, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. It's just after 1 o'clock. The top story, well, the death toll from one of the deadliest Russian strikes on Ukraine has sadly now risen to 32. 2 children are understood to be among those who have been killed. Another 84 people, including 10 children, were injured after ballistic missiles hit the centre of Sumy as crowds gathered to mark Palm Sunday. Shocking video verified by the Reuters news agency shows bodies lying in the street, a destroyed bus and cars engulfed in flames. Ukraine's Interior Minister said victims were found in vehicles, on public transport and in nearby buildings. President Zelensky, meanwhile, has condemned the attack with civilians on a religious holiday, calling it the act of scoundrels. Here at home, a man in his 50s has died after a house exploded in Worksop in Nottinghamshire, prompting a major emergency response and the evacuation of nearby homes. The blast tore through the terraced property on John Street just before 8 o'clock last night, sending bricks flying and shaking nearby buildings. Witnesses described a terrific bang that rocked the street and set off car alarms. Police say the man was sadly found inside the wreckage and died at the scene despite the best efforts of emergency services. The cause of the explosion is now under investigation and a cordon remains in place. Pope Francis has made a brief Palm Sunday appearance today as he continues to recover from a serious bout of double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff greeted crowds from his wheelchair in St Peter's Square and waved to well-wishers, saying Happy Palm Sunday before retreating back into the Vatican. While it remains unclear how much of Holy Week he'll take part in, his recent string of appearances, including a brief meeting with King Charles and Queen Camilla, suggest his strength is returning. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into the brutal attack at HMP Frankland by convicted terrorist Hasham Abedi. He's one of the men behind the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing. 3 prison officers suffered life-threatening injuries on Saturday after Abedi doused them in hot oil and stabbed them with makeshift weapons inside the high-security separation unit. 2 of the officers remain in hospital with severe stab wounds, and a 3rd female officer has been discharged. The number of people crossing the Channel in small boats has hit a record high for the first 4 months of the year. More than 8,000 migrants have arrived so far in 2025, already surpassing the totals for the same period in the last 3 years. That includes 656 people who made the journey on Saturday alone. That is the busiest day of the year so far. The Home Office says it's ramping up enforcement and cracking down on people smuggling gangs, calling the crossings dangerous and a threat to UK border security. President Donald Trump has exempted smartphones, computers and some other personal electronic items from the reciprocal tariffs he imposed on China. The move came after concerns from US tech companies that the price of gadgets could skyrocket, as many of them are made in China. And Foreign Secretary David Lammy says he is now demanding answers from Hong Kong and from Beijing after an MP was denied entry to the territory. Lib Dem Wira Hobhouse was turned away on Thursday after flying to Hong Kong to visit her son and newborn grandson, becoming the first parliamentarian barred from entering since 1997. Hobhouse has publicly criticised China over its clampdown on freedoms in Hong Kong, as well as its human rights record. So far, there's been no official comment from Hong Kong's immigration department or China's embassy here in London. Those are the latest headlines. Another update in around half an hour's time. Now, though, it's straight back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam, and good afternoon to you all at home. Hope you're having a pleasant weekend. Shocking scenes, weren't they, yesterday in one of Britain's highest security prisons as Manchester Arena terrorist attacker, the brother of the attacker, attacked 3 guards at HMP Frankland, leaving them with life-threatening injuries. Hasham Abedi, who's the brother of Salman Abedi, who carried out those horrific murders in Manchester, reportedly inflicted burns and stab wounds on the prison officers by throwing hot cooking oil over them before brandishing a homemade weapon. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now for the latest. Mark, counter-terror cops now taking over the investigation of this case. Expected?
Yes, I think absolutely it was expected. It was being described by the Prison Officers Association yesterday as a terrorist attack. And this is, of course, a high-profile terrorist prisoner, a man who was given an additional 3 years to his 55-year prison term for his part in the Manchester Arena bombing, but also handed that 3 years extra for a brutal attack on 2 prison officers back in 2020, which it said Hasham Abedi was involved, along with the Parsons Green bomber and another Islamist. So an individual who was put in what's described as a separation centre. There are 3 of those operating in 3 maximum security prisons across England and Wales. The other that I know of is at Belmarsh Prison as well. He was in there. It's an area where the most high profile, the most ideological and the most dangerous prisoners are held at the moment. It is wholly occupied, these separation centres, by Islamist prisoners. But there is a real issue and a difficulty with the fact that you've got groups of high-profile, fanatical Islamists in the same area, with a mindset that doesn't appear to be the kind of mindset that anyone in authority can do anything to alter. So the Prison Officers Association say it's all about control and containment, and really privileges like being given access to the kitchen, which this prisoner apparently was. The Prison Officers Association say just shouldn't be allowed to happen. We were hearing a little earlier today from the chair of the Prison Officers Association, Mark Fairhurst, who believed that not only was it access to that pan of boiling oil that gave this individual a very dangerous weapon, but the 2 long-bladed homemade weapons that were used were apparently fashioned from a baking tray within the kitchen area, again according to the Prison Officers Association.
And Mark, do we know how the officers are, the 3 officers?
Well, slightly more encouraging news. We got the news last night that the female officer who had been injured, she suffered burns, scalds from that hot oil as well, was discharged from hospital. The 2 male prison officers are still seriously injured, but they are described by the Prison Officers Association as now being stable. The conditions have stabilised. However, they are very seriously injured. They suffered multiple severe stab wounds. One was stabbed in the neck. Another officer stabbed multiple times in the back, and according again to the Prison Officers Association, suffered a punctured lung. And of course, as well as the burns and scalds from that hot oil.
All right, Mark, thank you for the update. Appreciated. We're joined now by the former head of counter-terrorism, Chris Phillips. Chris, good afternoon. Thank you for your company. Chris, there was a story doing the rounds a couple of weeks back in the Times newspaper saying that prisoners who refuse to join radical Islamist gangs in jail are having to be placed in segregation units for their own safety. I mean, Tommy Robinson is a prime example, one off the top of my head. How bad is this problem in British prisons with Islamism and gangs?
I don't think it's any secret that Islamism is ruling a lot of our prisons at the moment. They are the biggest gang, where there's an awful lot of them have been put away. And of course, they're not de-radicalised. And clearly this man is never going to be de-radicalised. He should not be in a position where he can get access to these kind of things. And we've got to find a way of dealing with them. But the bigger problem here is, what do we do with these people when they do come up for their end of term and they're getting released back into society as well? This is a bit of a nightmare scenario.
Chris, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, some people have been arguing over the past 24 hours that, it's one point saying he shouldn't have been in the kitchen baking cakes or whatever the hell he was doing, but they're now suggesting he shouldn't have been in the prison in the first place. If you're found guilty of murdering 22 people, children included, at Manchester Arena, some people are saying, Chris, that they shouldn't be on this earth at all.
Well, I mean, I would be along with that, but that's never going to be the case again. I don't think we're ever going to return to that. It's almost a waste of breath talking about it. What we've got to do is
even in the wake of Axel Rudabakana, Southport, I mean, the narrative seems to be gaining momentum.
Yeah, well, I don't think they should be allowed to live, but that's, I'm not, and I don't think those people are going to get their sway. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But what we've got to do is work out how we deal with these people. If we're not going to put them down, so to speak, or have them hung, or however it works, then we've got to work out what we're going to do with them, and they can't be given access to these kind of things. Prison officers have a right to their own life as well. These people have very little rights. They should have very little rights. They should be kept in, not only in containment, but actually in on their own, so that they don't have access to this kind of stuff. We're too busy worrying about their health and making sure that they're looked after and they get their human rights, and we are the prison officers that have to look after them.
Yeah. Have you heard anything on the street about prison officers, morale amongst officers up and down the country? What's the recruitment situation like?
I know for a fact that I mean, they're in the same boat as police officers. Really, they're understaffed, under-resourced, and of course things like this are just going to make their situation worse. You have to feel for them. Someone's got to do this job. We're asking these people to do a very, very difficult task. Like every other profession, there are good and there are bad, but in the vast majority are doing the right thing, trying to keep us safe from these animals. And we need to support them and listen to the Prison Officers Association when they say these people should maybe locked up in confinement and not being given access to these kitchens and the weapons that are in them.
OK, Chris Phillips, former head of counter-terrorism, thank you for your company. Have a good rest of your weekend. I'm joined now by my esteemed panel, political commentator Jonathan Liss and the broadcaster Christo Foufas. Good afternoon to you both. Christo, Chris Phillips just said there that he describes these people as animals. Somebody who murders 22 people at a Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, then goes on to attack prison officers. He describes them as animals. Surely, in the case of animals, dangerous dogs, and I'm sorry to be blunt about this on a Sunday afternoon, but you put them down.
This is a case of redemption and whether someone is beyond redemption. And I never used to believe this, but actually it was Southport that really changed my view on this, and I don't even want to mention his name. There are certain criminals who will never be able to be redeemed, who will never be able to be rehabilitated. I'm a real believer, actually, in prison for those prisoners who have a chance of making a good contribution to society, actually being given the chance to do that in prison. I think that there's an argument to say that for some prisoners that doesn't happen. But for prisoners like this, or for the Southport killer, someone who's in prison for 55 years, why are we keeping them alive? What is the point in this person being in prison who is beyond redemption, who is able to pursue a radical Islamist ideology, which also is not incompatible with privileges in prison? I think that stories like this really make a good case for the death penalty, in certain cases with some caveats.
Jonathan Liss, what is the point? These people are beyond redemption. They hate our country. I mean, the Abedi brothers came to the UK. They were born in the year of the height of Libya's civil war, and they were born in the UK, in Manchester. And this is how they repay the country that gave them refuge.
I don't think it's helpful to talk about redemption. That's a religious idea, and we are not God. And we operate...
Rehabilitation, then?
Yeah, rehabilitation is different. And when it comes to rehabilitation, I agree with Christo that there will be some people who can respond to rehabilitation in prison under the right circumstances, and we need to invest a lot more money in rehabilitation. Funnily enough, the government has turned to Texas, of all places, in the United States, not a state renowned for its liberal justice policies, to learn about how prison rehabilitation works in there, because they've had some good results. So that is something that the government should be focusing on. But of course, there'll be some people who do not respond to rehabilitation. And
death penalty in that case?
No.
Why not?
Because prison is not only about rehabilitation, firstly. It's also about sort of keeping people safe and acting as a deterrent and, of course, a punishment as well. That's all legitimate.
Can I interrupt you? Keeping who safe? The public?
Keeping the public safe.
Right, but prison officers in this case haven't been kept safe.
And clearly there's been a failure in this. Everyone can agree on that, and there needs to be an inquiry into how this was allowed to happen, etc. But fundamentally, for me, the death penalty comes down to a sort of basic case of state power and the rights of a human being. And actually, human rights only count, really, when they're being tested.
Do you think the Abedi brothers have...
They are human rights. They are human beings, Ben, so yes.
I believe in the human rights of the people.
Yes, also.
Killed.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm afraid to say that I think that there is a contract between yourself and the state, and when you give up that contract has been broken.
Yes, it has been.
The rights that he has as a human being
it doesn't give the state the power to kill you.
Well, sometimes it should.
Christo, what always interests me about Thatcherites and sort of small state conservatives like you is that you always sort of argue against the power of the state, and then sort of are prepared to give them the greatest power of all, which is the power over human life. What makes you think?
Congratulations, you've realised some arguments aren't black and white. There are grey areas.
What makes you think that the state is only going to act with this huge power that you're giving it in cases that you agree with? What is this? If you give the state this enormous power over people's lives, what is to stop the state from abusing it? What is to stop the state from executing people who are completely innocent, by the way?
Well, that's why fundamentally
we have the right to human life.
With caveats, obviously you wouldn't just immediately execute someone. There would be an appeals process. There would be a process by which you got to that stage, firstly. Secondly, congratulations in also arguing some Thatcherite policies there with a small state, which is what you're doing now. Brilliant. Nice to see that. I'm afraid to say that there are some people that are beyond rehabilitation. I will say the word redemption. Why are we paying thousands of pounds a year, hundreds of thousands of pounds a year? Why are we giving people like this access to cooking oil who has a radical Islamist ideology? And then we're supposed to just accept that these sorts of things are going on. It's ridiculous.
Well, as I said a second ago, clearly there's been a failure in this prison with this particular prisoner, and that needs to be looked at. But it doesn't mean that on the basis...
Should the state be bigger or smaller in the way in which
it doesn't mean on the basis of one cock-up in the prison system that we should then revert to the death penalty, Christo, and I expect you to argue a little bit more coherently.
Jonathan, you say that redemption is the wrong word because it's religious, but I would argue that in fact, you need to consider the spiritual aspects of this. If you are a human being who is one with whatever you consider God, be that a religious version of God or just being a decent person, when you break that contract, that spiritual contract, by taking somebody else's life intentionally on a mass scale, including children who are, I can't comprehend a parent losing a child. When you break that contract, that spiritual contract with your fellow human being, I don't think you deserve human rights, and I don't think you deserve the consideration of being looked after properly in the prison at the expense of hard-working British taxpayers.
And there is no sort of circumstance on earth where I would defend this man. What he did was beyond words, and what his brother did was obviously beyond words and comprehension, and it fills me with revulsion. That's obviously a given. What I do think, and it's really important, is that human rights, it's all very well to say we have human rights, but when we're going about our everyday lives, we don't actually notice them because we don't need to access those rights. The whole point of a human right is that it is completely non-negotiable. It applies to human beings in all circumstances. It doesn't mean that you have your liberty in all cases. Clearly, if you break the law, you do need to have some kind of penalty, varying depending on the crime that you committed. But it does mean that you have a fundamental right to your own life, and that, I think, is a principle that we sacrifice at our peril.
OK, Christo, last question to you. You are for capital punishment and the death penalty?
In certain cases, yeah. In cases like this, where it's beyond...
Absolutely nailed on. I agree. Completely agree. Axel Rudabacano as well, and others. Ian Huntley had argued child rapists, child killers. But is this just a fantasy of centre-right, right-wing Thatcherites, as Jonathan List would describe you?
Well, I think Thatcher was in favour of the death penalty, actually.
Thatcher was in favour of the death penalty when it came to child killers. That was the only exception she had, but she never wanted to legislate for it. And I think that this has been a debate that we've had for many years. I think at a situation where we are seeing, as you mentioned, taxpayers' money paying to keep these people who have absolutely no chance of ever making... What contribution could this person ever make to society? What is the point in keeping them alive? I don't see one whatsoever. I don't think the death penalty will ever be brought in. I don't think it will. But I think it needs a conversation when it comes to crimes and people like this.
OK, thank you both. Nice to see, on a personal note, my voice is holding up for now as well. In response to this incident, Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood says, I'm appalled by the attack of 3 brave officers at HMP Franklin today. My thoughts are with them and their families. The police are now investigating. I'll be pushing for the strongest possible punishment. Violence against our staff will never be tolerated. Just to add to this statement, she says, I will be pushing for the strongest possible punishment. This guy's in prison pretty much for life anyway.
But also...
So what punishment are you going to give him?
And also has the access to hot cooking oil and to items that could then end up being weapons. Well, that's not a strong punishment, especially if he's pursuing a radical Islamist ideology in that prison. Why is he given access to this stuff?
All right, great stuff. You're with me, Ben Leo, on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show, including after the government saved British steel yesterday, a record number of migrants crossed the Channel as well yesterday. Should the government now introduce emergency legislation to stop the boats? All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast every day from 6 a.m.
You two met, I mean, since we last saw each other, then you two have done Strictly. And, but the fact that you've... And there's quite an age gap.
51 years.
51. And yet...
I'm his granny.
Granny. But the fact you clearly get on really well and you've stayed in touch and you've developed a real friendship.
We really do. I mean, we live 5 minutes from each other. We speak most days and, you know, Angela had this amazing campaign with Let's Dance and obviously I was very, very much supporting that. And when you just get on like a house on fire, we just do. We get each other. We have great banter. And like you said, there's 51 years between us, but we feel like we've known each other for 51 years.
You have a particular interest in getting dance back into schools, don't you? I mean, your own experience of this, because your dad is a professional footballer, and you actually won a place, didn't you, into the football academy? It was sort of expected that you were going to be a footballer.
Yes, it was. I was expected to be a football player naturally because I was the eldest son, and you know Southampton wanted to sign me in the Premier League, and they still are. No, I chose to be a dancer, and it was because my dad and mum sent me to dance classes because I was very hyperactive as a kid. I was pretending to kick a football all the time. They sent me to my next door neighbour's dance school, and the class was called Tango Tots. I somehow ended up being a dancer and had to tell my Geordie dad when I was 12 years old that I wanted to be a dancer.
How did that go down?
It went fine. It's not like the film, not like the film, but it's very, 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 very supportive. And obviously the brother ended up being the football.
But you're very keen to get dance back into schools, aren't you? Tell me why.
I'm so keen because for kids that can't afford it why not just give them the opportunity to learn to dance? We live in a world today where we're on the phones, we're on TikTok, kids are learning to dance anyway, so why not regulate it and let them learn it in school for free?
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, in a lightning fast 48 hours, the government's now taking control of Chinese-owned British Steel after emergency legislation was rushed through Parliament yesterday in a rare Saturday sitting. But, as a GB News exclusive report revealed, a record day for small boat crossings happened yesterday as well in 2025. Should they take similar emergency action to stop the boats? Well, joining me now is somebody who's been quite vocal on this on X/Twitter in the past 24 hours, former Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood. Sir John, good afternoon. Thank you for your company. It just goes to show, doesn't it, Sir John? Government can get itself together. We can act. We had all the MPs taking selfies on trains, hurtling down to London for this emergency sitting because saving British Steel was so important. Yet there seems to be a lack of will when it comes to stopping the small boats crisis.
Yes, there is. And as you rightly say, it does show that a government with a colossal majority can dominate the timetable and the proceedings of the House of Commons. And when it makes such a mess as it's done of the steel negotiations with this Chinese company, they can even do it on a Saturday when they should have realised some weeks ago when people were warning them that they needed to take earlier action. But I'd love them to sort the small boats out. They promised us that. They said they were going to crack down on the gangs. And we've learned in the last week that they don't even ensure the arrest of the people who are driving the boats over. And when our border force goes out there to rescue people off those boats, they can obviously see who is controlling the boat, and yet they don't get arrested when they arrive in Britain. Now, why not? Surely that's where you would start. These are part of the guilty gang, and they should be arrested and cross-examined, and the whole gang should be rounded up as quickly as possible.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, it flies in the face of smashing the gangs in its literal sense. So, John, I have a question for you, which maybe you won't want to answer because some may maybe accuse me of delving into the realms of conspiracy. But I look at this small boat situation, not just under Labour as well, but the Conservatives too, when it first started some years ago. And I just don't understand why, if there is such a critical problem taking place, there is a some would describe an invasion of our southern border, thousands, tens of thousands of strange, mostly men from faraway lands. We don't know who they are, where they're from, what their intentions are. I consider that a national security risk. For me, this is so serious, yet the response from our political leaders seems so unwilling. Is it incompetence, Sir John, or is there a sense of perhaps maybe for some reason it's intentional, maybe even quite simply to fund the pockets of NGOs?
I remember having a lot of conversations, myself and a few other colleagues very concerned about this, with a couple of Conservative Home Secretaries, and I'm quite sure both those Home Secretaries were as dedicated in intent as you and I are to stop this, and they tried many things, and they always had to make the suggestions. The civil service and the border force were not coming forward with the idea, so they were putting up the suggestions. Quite a few were vetoed on the grounds that they wouldn't carry them out or they thought they were illegal. And others, of course, met their death in the courts, and so they were constantly thwarted. Now, I do think the Conservatives should have done more, and I and others favoured emergency legislation to say that in these cases, the human rights regulations in Europe did not apply, and that the British Parliament had a settled will to stop these gangs organising these illegal and dangerous boat trips. But the government wasn't prepared to do that. I think that is the step that this government has got to do because they're losing too many cases in courts, as well as lacking resolve on enforcement. And I think, again, Border Force needs to see that its role is enforcement as well as rescue.
Yeah, Labour, they boast, and I guess to their credit, I mean, it is low-hanging fruit, but they say they've deported 11, 12, 13,000 people since they took power. I do argue all the time, as I just said, it's low-hanging fruit. It's the Vietnamese nail bar
well,
workers.
They were the voluntary ones.
And they paid a lot of them as well.
The issue is getting rid of the illegals who don't want to go back.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think they've been doing that, and that is much more difficult. That was what Rwanda was all about, and they cancelled Rwanda.
Yeah.
And now they seem to be saying, well, maybe we do need an offshore processing centre. Well, of course you do. That was what Rwanda was all about. And if you don't like Rwanda, then hurry up and put in another one. But they're not able to do so.
Yeah, who would have thought, eh? No deterrent, and the boats keep coming. Who'd have thought it? So, John Redwood, thank you very much for your company. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Joining me now back on the panel, Jonathan Liss and Christo Foufas. Welcome back, panel. Jonathan Liss, not a good look when Sir Keir Starmer and his government going into the election last July were all about smashing the gangs, stopping the boats, stopping the small boats crisis. It's worse than ever before.
Well, as I've said on this channel...
The indefensible. Sorry, go on.
As I've done on this channel many times, Ben, I would not have the same policy on the boats or the gangs as the government. Having said that, it was incredibly foolish of the last Prime Minister, whose name I forget, Rishi Sunak or something, to say stop the boats, because that was never going to happen under the government's policy. It'd be very difficult to stop the boats, I think, under any policy, but particularly under his policy, it would have been impossible. And Starmer, to his credit, has not said stop the boats because he knows he can't stop them altogether. He has said smash the gangs, which is, I suppose, a little bit easier if you do have this task force that's going to sort of try and clamp down and you cooperate with the French authorities. There are ways that you can do that. But the fundamental problem remains, and will remain until we acknowledge this reality. There will always be people who want to come to the United Kingdom, one. Two, claiming asylum is not illegal. It is an internationally recognised human right. It doesn't mean that all claims of asylum will be granted, but it means that everyone has the right to claim asylum. Under the current UK system, you can only claim asylum in the UK. And also under the current UK system, there is no way for people to come to the UK in order to claim asylum. And so what we are doing is basically sustaining the business model of these gangs by not providing any legal or safe alternative to the boats. So if we had a system where you could have asylum processing centres in France, for example, sure, some people would get rejected and would still try to make the journey, but far fewer would attempt that journey having already had their claims rejected. Or you could even have a system, which is not impossible, where you could have embassies, British embassies around the world, where people could try and claim asylum there before trying to come to the UK. Or you could even have a system where people could come on registered vessels to the UK in order to claim asylum. Obviously, that would, be a difficult system in some ways.
Why don't these people claim asylum in the first safe country they're in? France is a safe country. Why is Britain having to be the doormat to the world's needy and vulnerable?
As we, as we often discuss on this programme, that there are many, many reasons why people might want to go to certain countries. No,
we're too generous with benefits, with hospitality.
We are not generous. Other countries are much more generous in Europe. And, it could be family ties, it could be that they speak the English language, they speak French, all kinds of reasons why people might come to Britain. But it's actually, nowhere in international law does it say that you have to go into the first safe country
and maybe that is something that needs to be changed. I agree we need some blue sky thinking about this. I don't think Rwanda was the answer, but I don't see why we can't have an offshore processing centre. You go there. If you don't go there, you are refused. You go to that offshore processing centre. That is where you go. And to your point, we are generous. We are generous. Perhaps while you're claiming asylum, there is an argument to say that compared to other countries, we're not. But if you get asylum here, you do get free healthcare. You get free education. That is a draw to people who come here. It's undoubtable. And so, and by the way, just one final point. We are a generous nation when it comes to asylum. When we see people who are genuine, when we look at Ukraine, we are really generous to those people. But people don't believe that the people who are coming here are genuine asylum seekers. We need to rip up the whole system and start again.
There's not what people believe, Chris.
Got to move on. Sorry, Jonathan. We'll continue this after the break. Let's get some news headline updates with Sam Francis, though.
Ben, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime: Sir Keir Starmer has now condemned one of the deadliest Russian strikes on Ukraine this year, calling it a horrific attack on civilians. We now know that at least 32 people, including, sadly, 2 children, were killed and more than 80 injured when Russian ballistic missiles hit the centre of Sumy during Palm Sunday celebrations. Verified footage shows bodies lying in the streets, a destroyed bus and burning cars, with Ukraine's Interior Minister calling it yet another act in Russia's campaign of terror. The Prime Minister has said that his thoughts are with the victims and their families and urged President Putin of Russia to agree a full and immediate ceasefire without conditions. Here at home, a man in his 50s has died after a gas explosion tore through a house in Worksop in Nottinghamshire on Saturday evening. Emergency services were called to John Street, where they found a terraced home partially destroyed and neighbouring properties badly damaged. The man's body was later found in the wreckage, and despite efforts to save him, he died at the scene. Nottinghamshire police say a major incident has now been declared and multiple homes evacuated. A cordon is also still in place as investigators examine the blast site. Pope Francis has made a brief Palm Sunday appearance today as he continues to recover from a serious bout of double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff greeted crowds from his wheelchair in St Peter's Square and waved to well-wishers, saying Happy Palm Sunday, Happy Holy Week, before retreating back into the Vatican. And while it remains unclear just how much he'll take part in Holy Week, his recent string of surprise appearances, including that brief meeting with King Charles and Queen Camilla, do suggest that his strength is returning. And counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into a brutal attack at HMP Frankland by convicted terrorist Hasham Abedi. He is one of the men behind the 2017 arena bombing in Manchester. 3 prison officers suffered life-threatening injuries on Saturday after Abedi doused them in hot oil and stabbed them with makeshift weapons inside a high-security separation unit. 2 of the officers are still in hospital with severe stab wounds, while a third, a female officer, has been discharged. All were targeted inside a unit there designed for the UK's most dangerous extremists. The Prison Officers Association is now demanding immediate changes, warning the freedoms given to inmates like Abedi, including access to kitchens, must end to prevent copycat attacks. Those are the latest top stories for you. A full roundup at the top of the hour, and Ben will be straight back after this short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend on GB News with me, Ben Leo. Now, Liberal Democrat MP Wira Hobhouse has revealed her shock after being refused entry to Hong Kong. She flew to the Chinese region with her husband on Thursday to visit her grandchild, but was dramatically detained at the airport and deported on the first flight home to the UK. The MP for Bath is also a member on the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, which is highly critical of their human rights record. Well, let's see what my panel make of this. Political commentator Jonathan Liss and the broadcaster Christo Foufas. Hello, panel. Welcome back. Christo, your take on this. Do MPs have a divine right to travel to whichever country they want?
I don't think they do, and I think we need more detail on this as to why this happened, because on the surface it doesn't look fair, but I don't know particularly what China's motivation is with this, and obviously this has been in the news this week because there were the two MPs, Labour MPs, that were refused entry to Israel as well. We have the right to do that here, by the way, as well. I mean, the UK generally doesn't exercise that right. We generally do allow ministers from other countries to come here, but we do have the right, if we wish to refuse that entry as well. So this raises more questions to me than answers. I want to know detail about why she was refused.
Well, the whole point is that she wasn't told why, and I don't see the Chinese Communist Party putting out a detailed press release explaining why. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think in general, if you are going... I think in general, people should have freedom to travel to places generally, unless they've done terrible things. And certainly parliamentarians should, but this was not a parliamentary delegation. This was a private visit by the MP to visit her son and his newborn. And obviously that's very distressing for her, and if it is, presumably the Hong Kong government is not just randomly sort of detaining British people. It is because she's an MP and presumably because she's been very critical of China in the past that she has been detained in this way, and I think that's wrong.
I'm just reading her blog, wirahobhouse.co.uk. In 2019, she penned a little piece, a little article talking about one way of dealing with human rights abuses in China. She writes, one practical way forward could be to create policies of reciprocal access. Chinese journalists and officials are free to go anywhere in most Western foreign countries, but foreign journalists and diplomats do not have anywhere near the same freedom to travel in China. She goes on, human rights abuses flourish in the dark. If journalists and diplomats were free to travel anywhere in China, this would make a big difference. I would like to encourage this government to examine reciprocal access policies alongside its European and global allies. Long story short, she's basically calling for travel restrictions on the CCP. So is it a surprise, Christo, when you have an MP saying we should restrict the travel of Chinese politicians, that she herself is subject to the same treatment upon trying to get into Hong Kong?
No, I mean, that isn't the worst criticism of the CCP you could ever hear, I have to say. I mean, it sounds quite moderate, but we can't have it both ways. If we are saying that globally people want to protect the people that come into their country and protect their country from views that they don't like, then I'm afraid that this is something that's going to be a consequence of that. You can't travel, there are restrictions as a normal person travelling to America if your Twitter feed is too controversial against the American state. It's true. I mean,
which is a complete violation of the First Amendment, of course.
Yeah, but I understand. Would you not want a situation here, right? If someone has had You know, we were just talking about radical views. We were just talking earlier about radical views. Do you not think that a state has the right, if someone has radical views, to say, sorry, we
Who gets to decide what radical views are, Christo? Look, that's
the whole point.
No. What you're having right now with America is people who are... there was a French researcher who was detained at the border and then deported for comments he made on social media. Presumably they weren't advocating violence, they just were anti-Trump. That is completely chilling, and there are all kinds of experts who are sounding the alarm about American free speech, and, you know, these stories about some students who've been sort of sent home for completely sort of trivial reasons, and sort of long-term residents who've been deported, an Australian guy who was deported for reasons he doesn't even know. And so that is a separate issue. If Vera Hobhouse has been credibly accused of human rights abuses, yeah, maybe she shouldn't be allowed into various countries. I have seen no evidence, and the Chinese government has not provided any evidence for any sort of crime or sort of misdemeanour that she's committed. She's just been a bit critical of China. If the UK government is banning certain Chinese politicians from coming, which I don't think they should as a matter of universal policy...
That's what she called for.
But no, I don't think that she was calling for all Chinese politicians to be banned from the UK. I mean, I'd have to sort of ask her what she meant by that. But presumably she's not advocating for a blanket ban on Chinese politicians and journalists. She's saying that if you are, you know, we should be allowed the same access they're allowed, and presumably if you are found, if you're accused of some human rights abuses in Tibet or whatever, you should have some freedoms curtailed because of that.
Well, interesting. I support MPs to go wherever they want, but I also support the rights of democratic countries, or in this case,
China?
authoritarian countries. China. Don't be surprised when a country such as China, who punishes people with social credit scores for parking tickets and dissenting the government on social media, that they're going to ban you from their country when you slag them off.
And there is the debate. It's where the line is. But my point is that we can't have it both ways. We can't say that we don't want people with extreme views coming to the UK ourselves and then criticise other nations that consider extreme views to be a reason not to have people go to their nation.
Well, I don't think that we should actually ban people. I think unless they're found, unless they're accused of offences, I don't think we should ban people.
OK, let us know what you think. gpnews.com/your say. Now, talking of travelling abroad, maybe you go to China. But if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some top European holiday destinations.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, it's an east-west split across the Mediterranean as we go through the next couple of days. Fairly settled for much of Turkey and Greece. Temperatures here climbing into the low 20s in places, but for much of Italy and southern France, actually some very unsettled weather developing. Could see some flash flooding in places. Also fairly unsettled for Spain and Portugal, although down towards the Canaries we should see some decent sunshine. For Tenerife, Wednesday, Thursday, we could see highs reaching 23 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, most of us have seen some rain over the last 24 hours or so, and as we go through the rest of today, actually, we'll probably see a little bit more. The reason for the changeable conditions is down to the fact that we're now firmly in charge by an area of low pressure, and that's going to bring in some further spells of rain as we go through the course of today. In between, we will see some sunshine, with the most frequent showers probably across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where they will potentially be heavy and possibly even thundery in a few spots. For all of us, temperatures will be down on recent days. We could still see temperatures reaching around 18 degrees in the southeast, but I think for most of us, probably feeling a little bit fresher. So as we end Sunday afternoon across Scotland, it is really going to continue to be a mix of sunshine and showers. Again, some of these showers could be on the heavy side, and the odd rumble of thunder is possible. Very similar story for Northern Ireland. But as we move over towards England and Wales, I'm hopeful that these showers will start to begin to ease. So may see more in the way of sunshine as we end the afternoon. So some late sunshine to be had here. And as we go into the nighttime period, most of England and Wales turning dry and clear. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, further showers moving in, also accompanied by an increase in breeze, and the showers potentially arriving into the far west of Wales and southwest England by the end of the night. But ahead of this, under the clear skies, a chilly night, could see a touch of frost in the countryside. So looking ahead to Monday, for much of eastern England into the Midlands, central southern England, actually it's going to be a fairly reasonable day, some spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, more in the way of cloud, outbreaks of rain, especially for eastern Scotland down into northwest England and Wales. Quite a disappointing afternoon to come here, but in the sunshine further east, feeling a little bit warmer, highs here reaching 19 or 20 degrees.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 PM every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 PM and 5 AM as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Ben Leo. We've got some breaking news about small boats, but this time it's good news. Let's cross to the banks of the River Thames, where GB News reporter Jack Carson is watching the women's race unfold. Jack, what's the latest?
Well, I can tell you that Cambridge have won the 79th women's boat race, and by quite some margin as well, more than 7 seconds by the time they got to Matlock at the finish line. Things had started off in quite a bit of controversy, both Cambridge and Oxford really flying out the blocks. Cambridge taking an early lead by about a third of a length, but as Oxford tried to make up ground, Sir Matthew Pinsett, the race umpire, mulled over possibly disqualifying Oxford because of blades clashing. The Oxford cox Daniel Orton seemingly being judged at fault for that, and the two coming together at one point, almost thinking that some might be falling out of the boat. So we opted for a restart rather than a disqualification for Oxford, and that restart was given to Cambridge, allowing them to restart by a third length. And in the end, once we got going again, Cambridge just seemed to pull out even further and further, and once they'd got a boat length ahead of Oxford, there was really no coming back. They looked to get into that rhythm nice and neatly, and that is all really the key for races like this, getting into the rhythm. That physical preparation is one thing, but the mental preparation is another. Getting into the rhythm is how you win races like that, and that's exactly what Cambridge did, managing now for the Cambridge women to go 8 races in a row, beating Oxford. We actually caught up with some parents of some of those who were involved in the race earlier on. Here's what they told us.
My son's racing for Cambridge. Yeah.
That must be quite a proud moment for yourself.
Oh yeah, we're totally blown away by his dedication and what he's gone through and how he set his mind to it. As an American, who, you know, while I've had an affinity for England and have come to be a rowing fan through his participation over the last 6-8 years, you know, I didn't know about the boat race, and so I've come to understand kind of what it means and what a big deal it is.
I'm really excited because my daughter is competing today, and she's on the Cambridge boat, so we're really, really excited to watch. I'm from Mexico. Yeah, but we've come all this way to watch her. We have family coming from Sweden and from Australia, so we're here to watch and cheer for both crews.
It is a special day for me because my daughter Eloise is rowing in her first boat race for the women's reserve crew. So she's 18. She just started her first year at Keys, and yeah, looking forward very much to the day. Until I see her go down, you can't quite believe it's actually happening. Hopefully, I was given a slot 11:35. I might be able to see her briefly before the race. So we'll see.
You can hear how proud those parents are of their sons and daughters taking part in the boat race today, and I'm sure those whose daughters have just taken part in the 79th women's boat race are proud and chuffed. Cambridge, the eighth in a row, 79th women's boat race today goes to Cambridge.
Jack Carson, thank you very much. I think the men's race is at 2:21, so we'll catch up with you in just a short while. Yeah, proud parents. I took my son to his second tennis tournament yesterday, and my wife overheard a family calling me a helicopter parent. Do you know what that is?
A parent who just comes in she just goes in for like big events and stuff.
Well, no.
Isn't it a pushy parent?
Yeah, I was sort of stalking the sidelines and just trying to make sure he was OK. He's only 5, my boy.
Is it an umpire in tennis?
Yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that more in the next hour. Lucy Letby's story developing on the Mail on Sunday today. Could she be a victim of a miscarriage of justice? But first, let's take a look at your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. We're looking ahead to the new week. It's going to remain fairly changeable across the country. Further spells of rain for most of us, but we will see some sunnier interludes at times. So the reason why is that we really are now going to be under the influence of low pressure throughout most of the week, and that's really how we're going to see out Sunday. We start off with plenty of showers around, but across England and Wales, we will see the showers fade away as the evening goes on. So plenty of clear skies here overnight, where for Scotland and Northern Ireland, continue to see some further showers and accompanied by an increase in wind here. But where we do see the clear skies, it will be a chilly night, could see a touch of frost in the countryside. But it's here really across East Anglia and the southeast in the morning where we'll start off with plenty of sunshine. Further west across southwest England and Wales, we'll start to see some showers move in. Similar story for northwest England too. Few showers too for Northern Ireland and also parts of Scotland, although the very far north of Scotland actually we could start the day here with some sunshine too. But it's really the zone between eastern Scotland down into northwest England and Wales where it's going to be a fairly disappointing day to come. Further outbreaks of rain, some of this will be heavy. Also showers for parts of southwest England and Northern Ireland, but to the east of this across East Anglia and southeast England actually a reasonable day to come here, plenty of sunshine, and in the sunshine feeling a little bit warmer here, so we could see highs reaching 19 or 20 degrees. But if you're stuck under the rain, especially further west, it is going to be feeling fairly cool for the time of year. Into the evening period, we'll continue to see outbreaks of rain move northwards. Also keeping an eye on the risk of some heavy rain just arriving into the southeast as well. And really, the middle of the week is going to be pretty changeable across the board. Temperatures for most around average, but still feeling okay if you do see some sunshine.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain.
At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 13th of April. This is the weekend on GB News, and I'm Ben Leo. Horror in HMP Franklin. 3 prison officers attacked by the brother of the Manchester Arena bomber. Counter-terror cops are now investigating the attack at one of Britain's highest security prisons. But how was this allowed to happen? And was this chap, or this monster, should he have been in the prison in the first place? Capital punishment is the topic of discussion. Elsewhere, British Steel lives to see another day. For now, emergency legislation is passed to keep Scunthorpe's blast furnaces burning. But the Conservatives say the crisis isn't over yet.
We've now got this botched nationalisation where the taxpayer is on the hook, the Secretary of State is giving orders to the business, but it's still in Chinese hands. I don't think that's right for this country, and it's not right for the taxpayer.
And elsewhere today, Oxford failed to stop Cambridge dominance as they win the women's boat race for the 8th time in a row.
Cambridge off to a flyer here in the women's boat race, winning that now 8 in a row. The men are up next in 20 minutes time. Can Oxford fight back? Join me on the Putney Embankment.
Very good afternoon to you. Hope you're well and you're enjoying your Sunday. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Weekend. And of course, this show is nothing without you at home on your TVs and your radios. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's stories we'll be discussing. gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation. Keeping me company today is political commentator Jonathan Liss and the broadcaster Christo Fufas. But before we get stuck into today's stories, here's the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 2. The top story this hour, Sir Keir Starmer has condemned one of the deadliest Russian strikes on Ukraine so far this year. He's called it a horrific attack on civilians there. At least 32 people are now known to have died, including 2 children, and more than 80 left injured. That's after a Russian ballistic missile hit the centre of Sumy during Palm Sunday celebrations. Verified footage sadly shows bodies lying in the street, a destroyed bus and cars left burning. Ukraine's Interior Minister has called it yet another act in Russia's campaign of terror. Well, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has also said that his thoughts are with the victims and their families and has urged President Putin of Russia to agree to a full and immediate ceasefire without any conditions. Meanwhile, a man in his 50s has died after a house exploded in Worksop in Nottinghamshire, prompting a major emergency response and the evacuation of nearby homes. The blast tore through the terraced property on John Street last night, sending bricks flying and shaking nearby buildings. Witnesses described a terrific bang that rocked the street and set off car alarms. Police say the man was sadly found dead in the wreckage, despite efforts by emergency services to revive him. His family has been informed after being supported. The cause of the explosion is now under investigation. Pope Francis has made a brief Palm Sunday appearance today as he continued to recover from a serious bout of double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff greeted crowds from his wheelchair in St Peter's Square and retreated back to the Vatican. While it remains unclear how much of Holy Week he will take part in, his recent string of surprise appearances, including, of course, that brief meeting with the King and Queen Camilla, suggest his strength is returning. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into a brutal attack at HMP Franklin by convicted terrorist Hasham Abedi. He is one of the men behind the 2017 arena bombing in Manchester. 3 prison officers suffered life-threatening injuries on Saturday after Abedi doused them in hot oil and stabbed them with makeshift weapons. That took place inside a high-security separation unit at the prison. 2 of the officers remain in hospital. A third, a female officer, has now been discharged. All, we understand, were targeted inside a unit there designed for the UK's most dangerous extremists. The number of people crossing the Channel in small boats has now hit a record high for the first 4 months of this year. More than 8,000 migrants have so far arrived in 2025. That already surpasses the total for the same period in each of the last 3 years. That includes 656 people who made the journey yesterday alone. That is the busiest day of the year so far. In response, the Home Office says it is ramping up enforcement and cracking down on people smuggling gangs, and says the crossings are dangerous and a threat to the UK's borders. President Donald Trump has exempted smartphones, computers and some other personal electronic items from his reciprocal tariffs imposed on China. That move came after concerns from US tech companies that the price of gadgets could skyrocket, as many of them are made in China. And the Foreign Secretary David Lammy says he is now demanding answers from Hong Kong and from Beijing. That's after an MP was denied entry to the territory. Liberal Democrat Wira Hobhouse was turned away on Thursday after flying to Hong Kong to visit her son and newborn grandson. It means she's now become the first UK parliamentarian to be barred from entering since 1997's handover. Hobhouse has, though, previously criticised China over the clampdown on freedoms in Hong Kong, as well as its human rights record. So far, there's been no comment, though, from Hong Kong's Immigration Department or China's embassy in London. Well, you're up to date with all the top stories. For more, stay with us right here with Ben Leo.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam, and good afternoon to you at home. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday. You're with The Weekend on GB News with me, Ben Leo. Almost forgot my name then. A few emails. Thank you for your contributions on gbnews.com/yoursay. Jonathan, a couple for you, which I should put to you, and maybe you could answer them from a couple of fans.
Right, yeah.
Andy says, talking about the capital punishment, we were talking about the incident at HMP Franklin, one of the Abedi monsters who attacked prison officers. Andy says, does Jonathan List support the human rights of the raped teenage girls or those of the radical religious rapists whom Labour refused to bring to justice because they vote for Starmer? I think they're talking about grooming gangs.
If you are a human being, you have human rights. If you don't have human rights, then no one has human rights. That's just how it is. The qualification for enjoying human rights is being a human being. It doesn't mean that I approve of everything you do, far from it. And if you break the law and take away other people's human rights, you need to be punished for it. But it doesn't mean that you have no rights because you forfeit them. People don't forfeit human rights. If you can forfeit your human rights, then you never had them to begin with. This is the fundamental point.
Somebody else made, I forgot your name, apologies, but somebody on your say said, what does Jonathan think about, for example, armed police officers who, for example, in Australia, that brave young copper who stopped, I think it was a knife attack last year, by shooting dead a knifeman, a terrorist?
Well, in the same way that if you, for example, are in a war scenario, clearly there will be legitimate ways for you to engage in combat that take someone's life in order to save lives immediately. There are always those sorts of exceptions. I'm talking about in a justice system where a person is not. If you are intervening to stop someone from from killing someone else, that is legitimate. It will still need to go through process afterwards to establish the facts of it, to make sure that he didn't murder that person.
So therefore, the state, in exceptional circumstances,
it's not the state.
Hang on. If the state, in exceptional circumstances, does have the right to remove life if that person has broken a human rights contract, has broken the contract that we have with our fellow human beings.
No, it is not about the state doing it. No, I'm sorry. It's not about the state doing it.
Well,
It's about anyone doing it. If I had, in America, if you have a gun, for example, and you kill someone to stop, if the person's shooting people and you kill that person, you're not going to be prosecuted. You're not the state. You have killed someone, but you're not going to be prosecuted.
Police officers, hang on. You just responded to an example where police officers, i.e. the state, might take someone's life in the protection of other innocent lives.
That's not what we're talking about with the death penalty.
Also, freedom is a human right.
It is, Jonathan.
It is exactly what we're talking about.
If I punch you right now, which I don't want to do, but if I did punch you right now, that would be a criminal offence. If I was punching you to stop you punching a load of other people who are completely defenceless, that would make it completely different. That would be the defence.
You are not. You might think you're the state sometimes, but you're not.
No.
The state sometimes has the right to intervene. Now, what is the point in keeping someone who killed 22 children alive?
That you are not directly in. This is so. This is a ludicrously specious argument that you are propagating here. There is surely you can understand there is a difference between directly intervening in a moment where someone is shooting people dead or stabbing people or whatever to stop that attack happening,
or intervening
and
afterwards.
to protect a life, or a year or 2 years later arbitrarily deciding under the guise, the aegis of the state, that person no longer has the right to life and sentencing that person to be executed. Surely you can understand the difference between those two things.
I would argue, Jonathan, you are protecting future victims. If you've got a person...
We're not living in Minority Report.
If you've got a person who's killed 22, including children...
That person's already in jail. That person's already in jail.
Oh, yes, and
has gone on to attack 3 prison officers.
Yes, what about the rights of the prison
officers? That doesn't happen every day, and that doesn't mean that you completely change the framework of international law to stop a very, very rare attack on prison officers. This is a ludicrous argument.
The state sometimes has the right to take a life in exceptional circumstances. The principle remains.
Individuals have the right to do it, whether or not they're police officers or members of the public.
OK. Let's move on. Great debate. We're, of course, talking about these shocking scenes in one of Britain's highest security prisons as one of the terrorists involved in the Manchester Arena bombing attacks has attacked I'd argue, to an inch of their life, 3 guards at HMP Franklin, leaving them with life-threatening injuries. Hasham Abedi, who is the brother of Salman Abedi, who carried out those Manchester attacks, of course, reportedly inflicted burns and stab wounds on the prison officers by throwing hot cooking oil over them before brandishing a homemade weapon. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now. Mark, I won't drag you into the capital punishment debate. I won't put you on the spot, but what's the latest, please, on this situation at Franklin? How are the officers, primarily?
Well, we're told that the 2 most seriously injured officers, the 2 male prison officers, have stabilised. However, they are seriously injured. They have suffered severe stab wounds from this makeshift homemade weapon or weapons that were apparently, according to the Prison Officers Association, fashioned from a metal baking tray within the kitchen area of the separation unit. One officer, we believe, suffered a neck injury from a stab wound. Another officer was stabbed multiple times in the back and suffered a punctured lung. A female prison officer who was also injured yesterday, she has since been discharged from hospital. We've just had a statement from the Ministry of Justice on this. They say, our thoughts remain with the 2 prison officers still in hospital as they recover. There will, they say, be a full review into how this attack was able to happen alongside the separate police inquiry. And then they go on to say the government will do whatever it takes to keep our hard-working staff safe. A little earlier, we heard from the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who said she would be pushing for the strongest possible punishment. It's difficult to see what the strongest possible punishment would be for Hashim Abedi, given that this is a man already serving at least 55 years for his part in the Manchester Arena bombing. In addition to that, he was handed another 3 years and 10 months for his part in a brutal attack on 2 prison officers back in 2022. That attack that took place at Belmarsh Prison also involved the Parsons Green bomber and another Islamist. So at 28, with 3 years and 10 months added to a 55-year minimum term that he must serve before he's even eligible for parole, it's very unlikely that this man will ever see the light of day again, will ever taste freedom again. So it's difficult to see what that strongest possible punishment is likely to be. And that's why the Prison Officers Association is saying that really what needs to happen in terms of these separation centres, which are dealing with the most extreme and violent Islamist prisoners, is that the privileges, such as being able to go into a kitchen area and have access to items that could be turned into deadly weapons, these individuals need to have a basic level just of control and containment, because that's the only way that you can properly manage very violent individuals like this and keep those prison officers who have the horrific and onerous job of trying to guard them and keep themselves safe at the same time. It's the only way, really, the Prison Officers Association would argue that you can keep those officers safe.
OK, Mark, whilst I've got you, would you mind me asking about the small boats situation? We had a record number yesterday of arrivals, more than 600, I believe, off the top of my head, a record for a single day so far this year. Any idea what the numbers look like today? The weather it's pretty decent as far as I can tell.
Yeah, well, I was reporting on your programme last night, of course. Our provisional figures had said 623 small boat migrants had crossed the English Channel, which was a new one-day record for this year, passing the previous record on the 3rd of March of 592. But actually, when the official figures came out this morning, it's even higher, 656 crossed yesterday in 11 small boats. Today the weather's closed in a bit. It's going to be a bit changeable over the next few days, so there will be days where it's passable for these boats to be launched. Today isn't one of them, so no small boats out today, but that still doesn't change the overall picture, which is showing record levels. We have now seen a 46% increase, so an almost 50% increase in small boat arrivals in the UK on where we were at this point last year. In fact, since this crisis of Channel small boat migrants began in 2018, this is the highest level we've ever been at this time of the year, after the first 4 months of the year, with more than 8,000 migrants now having crossed. And of course, that's important because this government, when it came into power, said that it was determined to smash the gangs. And to that end, they have been trumpeting in recent months the great successes they've been having in dismantling quite a few of the gangs, arresting people, cutting off their supply lines. But it's clear that when we see good weather, they're still coming across in ever-increasing numbers, which shows whatever they're doing isn't having an impact on the overall people smuggling business.
OK, Mark White, thank you for that brace of updates on those stories. Appreciate it. Back with my panel, Christo and Jonathan. Welcome back.
I'm so happy to hear that Mr Abedi might lose his baking privileges in prison. Won't be allowed near baking trays anymore, or oil.
I mean, why did he have them in the first
place?
Exactly.
It's just ridiculous. I think Mark White makes a really good point there, that this person is in prison for, 55 years. So what way could you punish him that is going to make any tangible difference to his behaviour whatsoever?
Jonathan, how would you punish this monster after yesterday's events?
Well, I would keep him in prison.
Would you give him a cuddle?
I mean, is that meant to be like a serious
question? How would you deal with him?
Would I give him a cuddle? Why would I give him a cuddle?
I'm being facetious. How would you deal? How would you?
I don't understand why you'd be facetious about that. Obviously, I wouldn't give him a cuddle. I don't approve of anything he's done. I keep him in prison, Ben. What would you expect me to say?
Right, yeah. Well, he's in prison at the moment baking cakes.
So, OK, well,
he killed 22 people.
What other policy options are there?
Answer the question.
Have a firing squad. We don't have the death penalty in this country. I've already explained to you why I don't support the death penalty.
I
would keep him in prison indefinitely.
But that hasn't worked. It hasn't worked.
There's been a cock-up that has allowed him to access these dangerous materials and launch an attack on prison officers. What are you proposing as a policy option here,
Well,
Christo?
I'm proposing that in cases like his, after due process...
what are you talking about right now? Because the death penalty is not going to be an option for this person, so what would you propose?
Well, I don't think that there's a punishment that's going to work. I don't think there is.
Then that's
My
the answer,
argument
then,
is that people like him perhaps shouldn't have been in the prison process in the first place because they would have been subject to the death penalty.
OK, let's move on. We've exhausted the death penalty to death, excuse the pun. I want to talk about a very quick story yesterday. We talked about the boat race going on at the moment. Cambridge ladies just won. I think the men are racing imminently. And Jack Carson was interviewing people, Riverside in Putney in South London, talking to very proud parents about their children and how they're very chuffed for their achievements. I was at a tennis tournament yesterday with my son. He's 5, and He's played tennis for a few years, but has only played a few official tournaments under the LTA. So I was just sort of stalking the courts and making sure he was serving from the right side. Wasn't being particularly, encouraging or aggressive or loud. Anyway, my wife was sat on the grass next to the family of a boy my son was playing. And they were saying, she told me, she didn't make herself known that she was my wife, but they were saying, oh, for goodness sake, look at him, why is he standing up, getting involved and talking to his son and so on and so on. And they called me a helicopter parent. Did you know, Christo, what a helicopter parent is?
A pushy parent, is that what it is? Someone is sort of an intervening parent?
I'd never heard of it before, but some viewers have got in contact. Lillian, good afternoon. You said a helicopter parent is a parent who takes an overprotective or excessive interest in the life of their child or children. For me, that's not an insult.
Yeah, also, that's being a parent. I mean, I hate this idea in this country now that if you are just a parent that does what a parent should do, that you are considered to be an overprotective or helicopter parent. No, you're just a parent. You're just doing what a parent should do. That's it.
Yeah, and what was your definition? You didn't know what a helicopter parent was?
No, I mean, I don't know what you were like, Ben. I can only imagine what you were like, but I'm sure that you were perfectly justified in everything that you did.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting conversation because, I mean, how much should parents push their children? You get what's called ballerina mums, as my mother used to call it, where they're very pushy and wanting the best for their child, but I don't think it's an insult. And I googled helicopter parent. There's lots of threads on forums and stuff about criticising pushy parents.
Well, I think it's legitimate for parents to want to support their kids. I think that children should be allowed a childhood. And I certainly don't think that you should ever. You have examples of parents who kind of are negging their kids' opponents and sort of bullying kids' opponents or sort of shouting stuff, and that's obviously always unacceptable. But it's good to support kids, but as long as you don't push them to things they want to do.
I think there is something in the fact that that privilege test that was done by Westminster Council. They said that if you filled that in and if you were someone whose parents read to you, you were privileged. No, that's not a privilege.
Whether you were read to
normal. Yes,
or read books.
If someone read to you, if your parent read to you as a child, then you are considered to be privileged. No, you are considered to have had a normal childhood. That's normal. That's not privilege.
Well, it's underprivileged if you weren't read to.
But it's normal. Why
it's underprivileged if you weren't. It's underprivileged if you weren't read to.
Fine, it's underprivileged if you weren't. It's normal if you were. It's not privilege if you were.
Well, I suppose it's an advantage that your parents are giving you. If the baseline is nothing, then your parents give you advantages in life which school can't offer. Your teachers can't sit with you in the evenings and read to you. Your parents
it's just. I find it frustrating. This erosion of what should be considered normal is now being called privilege. When what you were doing, of course, that is normal. You're helping your son. You're making sure he knew when to serve. You were doing what a normal parent does. And if you had started throwing insults at the other player who was older and lost, I understand, then I think that would be bad. But you weren't doing that.
I was berating his opponent and calling him names. That wasn't really. No, I was. My boy is 5, and I was just making sure he was serving from the right side and saying, "Oh, well done, Jude. Good stuff." I wasn't. I hear stories about Sunday League teams and young kids and the parents are squaring up and effing and blinding. None of that at all. It was very soft and very polite. Anyway, I just thought it was a very interesting conversation, and I just thought the observation that I was somehow a helicopter parent, whatever that is, was quite
Perhaps the parents who were sat there, not doing anything, should have been doing a bit more for their son. Maybe he would have won.
Yeah, well, my boy, yeah, he did win. My boy beat him. Anyway, moving on. You're with me, Ben Leo, on GB News on the weekend. Lots more coming up on today's show, including could a bombshell email, this is the big story on the front of the Mail on Sunday today, if you've seen it, could a bombshell email set baby murderer Lucy Letby free? All that to come and more on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Can you find love in your twilight years? That's what we're asking this morning. Broadcaster Ryan Mark Parsons and former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe join us now. Good to see you both this morning. Anne, let's start with you. Is 70 too old to date, do you think?
70 isn't too old for anything.
Oh.
Everybody ages at different rates, both mentally, physically, in the sorts of things they like. When you say to me, is 80 too late to, is 70, well, we might even say 80. It's too late to find love. The answer is just look around you. Lots of people have. But let me say right away, no, that's not an invitation. I've absolutely no ambitions in that area at all.
Ryan Mark, what do you make of it? Do we need to stop putting a bar on ageing and dating?
No, I don't think we should. I think once you get to such an old age, you really should be looking for love internally. I mean, you should self-love. I just don't see the point at 70 years old to be searching for love at that point. I think you should go on a holiday somewhere. I think you should find love with the sunshine and a cocktail, perhaps, instead of looking for a man or a woman. I think at what point do you decide that, you know, love is not going to come around knocking on your door? And I think probably at the age of 70, that is when you should decide it's time to give up. I'm 24, living in London. I know how incredibly hard it is to find love. I don't know how anyone who has wrinkles and grey hair at the age of 70, over someone like me, could perhaps find love. I just don't think it's possible. I think it's a nice idea, but I think it's not feasible. And also, I don't think there's any point at that age.
The People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, a new bombshell email could reportedly set baby murderer Lucy Letby free. The killer nurse is currently serving 15 whole-life sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. But now, the new email from the only medical witness at the trials is casting doubts on the chronology of events and suggests the baby's deaths might not have been due to Letby's actions. This is the big story on the front of the Mail on Sunday, if you've not seen. Joining me now is the Unheard Investigations editor, David Rose. David, good afternoon. Thank you for your company. What's your take on this Mail on Sunday front page? We've got this medical witness who was the only person, apparently, who directly saw Lucy Letby hovering over the cot of one of these babies, baby K, I believe it was. Should we give this prominence?
Well, for a start, it's not actually a Mail on Sunday exclusive. They followed up the story that we published yesterday morning in Unheard, myself and my colleague Lucy de Oliveira. And it's in fact the 4th story that we've published in the last few weeks, which casts doubt on the prosecution case against Lucy Letby. I think this story is, though, highly significant. What Dr. Ravi Jayaram, one of the consultants at the hospital, said at both of Lucy Letby's trials. In the first trial, the jury couldn't agree regarding baby K, but in the second trial last year, she was convicted of attempting to murder baby K. What Dr. Ravi Jayaram said was that this child, who was born 25 weeks gestation, very small, very weak, was found to be desaturating. That is, his oxygen levels were falling dangerously low, although he had been intubated and was on, she had been intubated and was on a ventilator. He said that Lucy Letby, when he came into the room, was just standing there doing nothing while it was apparent that the baby was in grave danger. But yet, in his very first account of this incident, which was in an email to 7 of his colleagues at the hospital, he wrote that, in fact, and I've got the email right here in front of me, he wrote that in this case, in fact, Nurse Letby, who had been at the incubator, called Dr. Jayaram to inform of low saturations. So it's a complete contradiction of everything he said later to the police, or much of what he said to the police, and at Lucy Letby's trial. Now, what makes this matter all the more serious is that this email was only disclosed to Lucy Letby's defence in September of last year. That is after she had been convicted of attempting to murder this child by dislodging her breathing tube. Now, quite clearly, had it been disclosed to her defence lawyers, they would have been in a position to cross-examine Dr. Jayaram and ask him to explain how it was that his story had changed. Now, there's one other thing to bear in mind. What was this email? It was part of an extensive correspondence between these doctors who were attempting to interest the police, as Dr. Jayaram himself put it in this email, pique the interest of the police in order to persuade them to investigate possible criminal offences at the hospital. So they were setting out details of what they thought should go into the report, which they did submit to the police shortly after this email was written. Well, there is Dr. Jayaram talking about this case in his first account of it and giving an account that is substantially different from what was heard at the trial. Before we go on, I just want to make one point. Just before we came onto this subject, one of your guests, Christo, was talking about how the incident that took place in Franklin Prison yesterday shows that we should have the death penalty. Well, I would suggest that, appalling as that incident is, and clearly, you know, representing the most horrendous security breach. Well, if Lucy Letby's case proves anything, it is that this country must never restore the death penalty. Given what happened after she was convicted, the hue and cry, the widespread portrayal of her for the most understandable reasons as an absolute monster, it's highly likely that if we had the death penalty, she might by now have been executed, given that she has already tried once to appeal and failed. Well, now new evidence is coming to light, not just this, but whole torrents of it, which cast grave doubt on the prosecution case and suggest that at the very least her convictions are deeply unsafe.
David, I've got some questions relating to Letby and your investigation. And first of all, apologies for saying it was a Mail on Sunday exclusive. They billed it as that, but I have my own experience in Fleet Street.
And by the way, the author of the story has apologised for that, but apparently he'd gone home when they put the exclusive tag on.
Oh, right. That's convenient. Convenient. Well, look, Christo's here. So, Christo, would you like to answer that question? You and I have both been advocating for the death penalty in nailed-on cases, but, as David has just said...
But also, as I have said when I have referenced that I think that there should be the death penalty in certain instances after due process, after appeal. So I wouldn't have had... I believe that there should be a delay before someone is actually subject to the death penalty. In Lucy Letby's case, that would have been the case. So I don't believe that someone should be found guilty and then immediately executed. And I know that would cost money.
She attempted to appeal last year. She was refused permission to appeal before this new evidence emerged.
Yeah, but that still wouldn't have meant that she would have been immediately subject to the death penalty, in my opinion. So I would have had... I believe the death penalty is appropriate in some crimes, but I think that there needs to be the chance to appeal and due process.
The legal history of this country is littered with convictions that have been quashed many years after they were first imposed by juries. You only have to look back at the notorious miscarriages of justice that took place or came to light from the 80s onwards, the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4, the Tottenham 3, and so on. And indeed, if you want to pick any jurisdiction in the world, you will find similar cases. I have a friend who's a lawyer in Chicago who has recently used DNA testing to exonerate a man who was convicted of a rape murder 65 years ago. This man spent 60 years in prison for a crime which now we can say with absolute certainty he did not commit. Had he been executed, he would have been an innocent man put to death by the state. And I'm afraid I don't think that the risk of that happening is ever acceptable. But let's come back to Lucy Letby.
You just referenced, I think, the reason why that there would be less of that now, and that is DNA testing. Many of the crimes that have been exposed to have had unsafe convictions that have resulted in innocent people going to the death penalty, they were before the invention of DNA testing, which we now have.
DNA is sometimes available and sometimes it's not. What's quite clear, if you take Letby's case, there's no DNA testing conceivable that would make any difference whatsoever. That doesn't mean, however, that there is not a raft of unreliable evidence used to convict her, which does render her convictions deeply unsafe.
OK, David Rose, Unheard Investigations Editor. Very much appreciate your company and expertise. Thank you very much. Thank you, Krista, as well, for your contributions on that. Let's get the news headlines with the very talented Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 2:30. The top story, Sir Keir Starmer has condemned one of the deadliest Russian strikes on Ukraine this year and called it a horrific attack on civilians. At least 32 people, including 2 children, were killed and more than 80 left injured when Russian ballistic missiles hit the centre of Sumy during Palm Sunday celebrations there. We have verified footage that sadly shows a number of bodies lying in the street, a destroyed bus and cars left burning. Ukraine's Interior Minister has called it yet another act in Russia's campaign of terror. Well, the Prime Minister has also said that his thoughts are with the victims and their families and urged the Russian President Putin to agree to a full and an immediate ceasefire without any conditions. A man in his 50s has died after a gas explosion tore through a house in Worksop, Nottinghamshire, on Saturday evening. Emergency services were called to the scene where they found a terraced home partially destroyed and neighbouring properties badly damaged. The man's body was later found in the wreckage and despite efforts to save him, he died at the scene. Nottinghamshire police say a major incident's been declared with multiple homes evacuated and a cordon still in place as investigators examine the blast site. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into a brutal attack at HMP Frankland by convicted terrorist Hasham Abedi. He's one of the men behind the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing. 3 prison officers suffered life-threatening injuries on Saturday after Abedi doused them in hot oil and stabbed them with makeshift weapons inside a high-security separation unit. 2 of the officers remain in hospital with severe stab wounds. A 3rd female officer has now been discharged. It's understood all were targeted inside a unit there designed for the UK's most dangerous extremists. And Pope Francis has been seen making a brief Palm Sunday appearance as he continues to recover from a serious bout of double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff greeted crowds from his wheelchair in St Peter's Square and waved to well-wishers, saying, "Have a very happy Palm Sunday," before retreating back into the Vatican. And while it remains unclear just how much he'll take part in Holy Week, his recent string of appearances, including that surprise but brief meeting with the King Charles and Queen Camilla, suggest his strength is returning. Those are the latest headlines, a full roundup of all the top stories here at 3 o'clock, and Ben will be back with you after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the weekend on GB News with me, Ben Leo. Now, did you know it's 200 years since the birth of the modern railway? And what better time for Olympic torch-bearing steam engine, the Green Knight, to launch an appeal for donations to restore the locomotive? Our reporter, Anna Riley, has the story.
A legendary locomotive that's run out of steam. The Green Knight was a railway workhorse when it was built in the 50s. It even bore the Olympic torch in 2012. But it's now off the tracks due to a significant crack in its firebox.
It's a BR Standard 4 class engine. It's a great engine for the railway. It's nice and powerful. It's easy to operate. It's quite modern for a steam engine. And it came to the North Yorkshire Moors Railway in the 2000s, early 2000s. It was restored here and ran, and now it's in need of a restoration. It needs a complete new copper firebox, and copper, you know, it's thick plate, it's expensive, and it needs that. So once we've done that, and once we've carried out the overhaul, it'll be good for another 50, 60 years. So it'll be a proper job, but it's at that time of life now where it needs a bit of TLC.
The North Yorkshire Moors Railway brings history back to life, and the charity's asking for £200,000 in donations to restore the Green Knight.
It's the boiler that needs most of the work. But mechanically, it's in reasonably good condition. It didn't run many miles before it was withdrawn. These are working engines. They need to be out there working and earning a living. You have got engines in places in museums, and they're all nice and shiny, but they just sit there, don't they? So we're a working railway. We've got to make our engines work, and you know, people come to see a working steam engine. So yeah, we've got to put them to use and make them do what they're built for, really.
The fundraiser also ties in with an important milestone in British train travel.
We started steam engines in the UK, and we're going to continue to run them. This is Railway 200 this year, 200 years of the railways, and it all started here in the northeast. So we're incredibly proud of that, and we want to make sure that we continue that story on for another 200 years. I might not be here then, but, you know, the team and the railway will be. And it's important that we pass on the skills and we keep these engines running. It's all part of our heritage, and we mustn't forget that. It's really important.
Restoration of the Green Knight ensures future generations can experience the magic of steam travel. Anna Riley, GB News.
Great stuff. Thank you, Anna, and good luck to the appeal trying to restore that very beautiful locomotive. Right, let's move on, because a Nottingham mum has been banned from her child's school after protesting lessons on trans identity. She says teachers were pushing a biased view and ignoring parents' concerns. The school has hit back, calling her behaviour aggressive. Now she can only return if she keeps quiet online. Christo, Jonathan, this is a very bizarre story. Basically, the mother's point is that her child has been subject to gender identity propaganda, as it's been described, the trans agenda, and she didn't want her child being subject to such things, and she complained online, and she's been banned from the playground.
Well, I don't think she just complained online. She actually was at the playground as well, as you said, and went there a few times. I do think if she's complaining online, that's okay. I don't think that there's a problem with complaining online or complaining.
So what did she do in the playground?
She was ordered to stay away from the playground. Apparently, she was banned from her daughter's primary school. She tried to protest outside, I think, outside the school, alongside Kelly J. Keane. Teachers called the police, but then she had left by the time the police had arrived. That was back in 2023, and then she was banned from the school a few months later for a period of 4 months after being accused, and again it's an accusation, of using nasty language towards a member of staff, smirking at a teacher, which I don't know what's wrong with that, but for also making vexatious complaints. So if she was doing that, and they were only accusations, I can kind of see the point about her interfering with the running of the school and whether that should be something that she was not allowed to do. But complaining online or complaining in a civil way to the school, I think is her absolute right to do that, and she should be allowed to do that.
Should 11-year-old boys and girls be taught about transgenderism?
I think that if it's an 11-year-old, I think if it's factual, i.e. some people... that's a fact. Some people do not agree that their gender identity matches their sex. That's a fact. Now, you're not saying that might be you. You're not saying to that child, are you transgender? You're simply stating that is a fact that happens in the world. That I don't have a problem with. What I do think is a problem is when you start getting down the road of telling children or medicalising children who are as young as 11 without a proper due process. That, to me, is where there is a conflict of rights, where the state needs to be involved, and there needs to be guidance and legislation about that. But the mere fact that it is happening, I don't think is a problem.
Jonathan, according to the 2021 census, the transgender population in the UK is something like 0.5% of the over 16 population, a minority.
Yeah, 0.5% of the population and 55% of the national conversation, it seems, at times. It kind of just illustrates the point.
So why do 11-year-old children need to be taught about trans people at school? What's the aim? Do you know?
I mean, I don't think that there should be sort of entire days of the curriculum devoted to it, but I think, as Christo says, it's completely legitimate in PHSE classes or biology or whatever it is, where these issues about gender and sexuality are being discussed, to sort of point out the fact that transgender people exist, whether or not you go down the policy route of saying that these rights should apply to trans people or whatever. It's just a fact that they exist, and that should be acknowledged. I grew up, and Christo certainly grew up in a time where his beloved great Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher introduced a deeply homophobic piece of legislation, Section 28, completely unforgivable, which, quote, forbade the promotion of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship. And that completely paralysed discussions of gender and sexuality in schools. And so a generation of kids grew up, gay kids, not thinking that they were wrong and that it was kind of legitimate to be bullied because no teacher was able to put the contrary view to class that actually you're fine, it's fine, it will be fine. And I think that we should be very, very careful about going down any route which kind of allows that path for trans kids as well.
Very quickly.
The difference is, though, and where I think that there are legitimate concerns, is that there's no medical aspect to being gay, and the fact that gay people exist, or the fact that trans people exist, but the fact that gay people exist doesn't require any kind of medical intervention. I think the issue with trans people, and especially children, is the promotion of some sort of medical intervention.
I don't think that's a discussion that's being advanced here.
My only concern, I don't want young people learning about transgenderism, because I think I get the feeling, and it's agreed by lots of people, that actually the trans movement is deeply homophobic in its essence, because you're telling young gay children that they're born in the wrong
critical moment is homophobic, Ben.
No. There is.
Lots of gay people agree.
There is a conflict of rights there that needs discussion. There are many conflicts of rights. Sports, the medicalisation of children, gay people. There are potential conflicts of rights there that need open and civilised discussion.
OK, let's move on. If you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, it's an east-west split across the Mediterranean as we go through the next couple of days. Fairly settled for much of Turkey and Greece. Temperatures here climbing into the low 20s in places, but for much of Italy and southern France, actually some very unsettled weather developing. Could see some flash flooding in places. Also fairly unsettled for Spain and Portugal, although down towards the Canaries we should see some decent sunshine. For Tenerife, Wednesday, Thursday, we could see highs reaching 23 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, most of us have seen some rain over the last 24 hours or so, and as we go through the rest of today, actually, we'll probably see a little bit more. The reason for the changeable conditions is down to the fact that we're now firmly in charge by an area of low pressure, and that's going to bring in some further spells of rain as we go through the course of today. In between, we will see some sunshine, with the most frequent showers probably across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where they will potentially be heavy and possibly even thundery in a few spots. For all of us, temperatures will be down on recent days. We could still see temperatures reaching around 18 degrees in the southeast, but I think for most of us, probably feeling a little bit fresher. So as we end Sunday afternoon across Scotland, it is really going to continue to be a mix of sunshine and showers. Again, some of these showers could be on the heavy side, and the odd rumble of thunder is possible. Very similar story for Northern Ireland. But as we move over towards England and Wales, I'm hopeful that these showers will start to begin to ease. So may see more in the way of sunshine as we end the afternoon. So some late sunshine to be had here. And as we go into the nighttime period, most of England and Wales turning dry and clear. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, further showers moving in, also accompanied by an increase in breeze, and the showers potentially arriving into the far west of Wales and southwest England by the end of the night. But ahead of this, under the clear skies, a chilly night, could see a touch of frost in the countryside. So looking ahead to Monday, for much of eastern England into the Midlands, central southern England, actually it's going to be a fairly reasonable day, some spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, more in the way of cloud, outbreaks of rain, especially for eastern Scotland, down into northwest England and Wales. Quite a disappointing afternoon to come here. But in the sunshine, further east, feeling a little bit warmer, highs here reaching 19 or 20 degrees.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Ben Leo. Let's head to the bank of the River Thames now in Putney, South London, where Jack Carson has an update on the annual boat race between Oxford and Cambridge. Jack, what's the latest?
Well, breaking news, Cambridge have won the 170 men boat race here today, and by quite some margin as well. Just over 16 seconds they led Oxford as they crossed the finish line. Here at Putney Embankment at the start line, Oxford and Cambridge looked neck and neck, whereas in the women's race, Cambridge, you could see, were already starting to pull out of a lead, but seemingly Oxford just putting too much early on, and once Cambridge got ahead, once they got a boat length ahead, they just seemed to control the race and just increase that margin further and further and further. You could see on the pain of both Cambridge and Oxford's faces just how gruelling this boat race is. The conditions have been difficult with the headwind today, the Thames as well. There was a delay to the start of the men's race because of debris and issues with another boat on the water. But once it got underway, seemingly today, Cambridge have just been the best side here today, winning both the women's and the men's race and the two reserves races. A clean sweep in the boat race today. Cambridge taking all of the honours home.
Great stuff. Thank you, Jack. A great British tradition. Glad to see it's gone well today. Thank you for your company today. Nana Akweer is up next. Jonathan, thank you. Christo, thank you very much. What's your plans rest of the weekend?
I shall probably have a nice glass of rosé and enjoy a bit more sunshine.
I think mine will be a lemsip to sort this roast out. You, Jonathan?
Oh, I'm just going for a day rave after this, I expect.
A day rave?
Yeah.
You're dressed for it.
How the other half live. Nana Akweer is up next. I've been Ben Leo. Thank you again for your company. Really appreciate it. I'll be back tonight from 9 p.m. Now, though, here's Nana Akweer.
Oh, Ben's voice has dropped an octave. He sounds as deep as mine. Listen, there's loads still to come on the show. Seriously, is it time to end this anti-white racism where you're supposedly positively discriminating, but you're actually creating reverse racism? It's just the other way round. Also, I've got an interesting guest coming into the studio, David Banks. He's talking about some interesting EU laws that are currently potentially going to be passing, which could affect our ability to get rid of people who come to this country illegally. So much to get to. Stay with me. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. We're looking ahead to the new week. It's going to remain fairly changeable across the country. Further spells of rain for most of us, but we will see some sunnier interludes at times. So the reason why is that we really are now going to be under the influence of low pressure throughout most of the week, and that's really how we're going to see out Sunday. We start off with plenty of showers around, but across England and Wales, we will see the showers fade away as the evening goes on. So plenty of clear skies here overnight, where for Scotland and Northern Ireland, continue to see some further showers and accompanied by an increase in wind here. But where we do see the clear skies, it will be a chilly night, could see a touch of frost in the countryside. But it's here really across East Anglia and the southeast in the morning where we'll start off with plenty of sunshine. Further west across southwest England and Wales, we'll start to see some showers move in. Similar story for northwest England too. Few showers too for Northern Ireland and also parts of Scotland, although the very far north of Scotland actually we could start the day here with some sunshine too. But it's really the zone between eastern Scotland down into northwest England and Wales where it's going to be a fairly disappointing day to come. Further outbreaks of rain, some of this will be heavy. Also showers for parts of southwest England and Northern Ireland, but to the east of this across East Anglia and southeast England actually a reasonable day to come here, plenty of sunshine, and in the sunshine feeling a little bit warmer here, so we could see highs reaching 19 or 20 degrees. But if you're stuck under the rain, especially further west, it is going to be feeling fairly cool for the time of year. Into the evening period, we'll continue to see outbreaks of rain move northwards. Also keeping an eye on the risk of some heavy rain just arriving into the southeast as well. And really, the middle of the week is going to be pretty changeable across the board. Temperatures for most around average, but still feeling OK if you do see some sunshine.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another